after the political assassination by my colleagues in Reform, which again, it came out of the sun like a Spitfire, that one. I wasn't expecting it. I was genuinely doing my best to drive for change. And I would have willingly supported Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister, but I now don't think he's fit to be Prime Minister. I mean, what happened to me in Reform irritated me. I thought it was morally wrong what they did. I thought the way in which they did it was wrong, and it's got me angry. We are a movement, and that doesn't mean to say the movement won't turn into a party. It might take over another party if it gets big enough. It might support another party with whom we agree if they get the right leadership. It's the collective will can defeat this minority vested interest, which I think is doing us all so much harm now. I'm telling you, the economy is about to implode.
Yes, I feel it.
And what these idiots, and Rachel Reeves is an idiot. I mean, they've got no idea what they're doing.
So what does win in 29 mean?
Win means we need an overall majority in the House of Commons somehow.
Right.
So off we go.
Good, good to see you again.
Any other difficult questions?
I've got loads of difficult questions. Well, first, but I'll start with not a difficult one. How do we restore Britain?
Well, after a year in Parliament, so I've been in Parliament nearly a year, in the same way that Keir Starmer's been Prime Minister for nearly a year. Oh dear, what a mess. I've concluded that actually the political system that we've ended up with is not fit for purpose. So, as you've probably seen, I've been quite an active MP. I have spoken in Parliament. I've raised the issues of, obviously, the Pakistani rape gangs. I've done the Lucy Connolly issue. I've fought for my constituents when loads of ammonium nitrate was dumped offshore my constituency with no consultation with me, the sitting MP. And I've also used early day motions. I've used German debates. I've used, all sort of tools that I think are there in Parliament. We've asked loads of questions, which I think is a powerful tool, which we continue to use. As an independent MP, though, I think I've put down to speak in various debates 53 times, and I've been selected 4 times. 3 of those were Prime Minister's questions, and one of those was a Treasury question. The rest of it, I just never get a question as an independent MP. So the odds are weighted against you if you just sit obediently. And I've concluded that the current political structures are not working for the British people. We've now got this vast blob of a morass of sort of mediocrity, which I think is now feasting on the back of the British public.
I think mediocrity is kind.
Well, mediocrity is kind, but I don't want to be too rude. But they're feasting on the back of the British public. They hide behind GDPR. I don't know about you, but you can never get a phone answered. You can never get an email acknowledged. And yet, if they want something from the honest tax-paying citizen, they're all over us like a cheap suit, and it's impossible to avoid it. So it's not what it should be. I don't think Parliament functions properly. It very much favours the current government, so they are able to bend and amend the procedures to suit their book. They're able to avoid difficult questions. They don't answer questions in Parliament. I think the public can see that. The Speaker is a Labour MP. I like him very much, but he is a Labour MP. And, when we get questions asked which aren't answered, he doesn't act like a chairman and make sure that either I have the right of reply as the questioner, or the person who's not answered the question is told, please answer the question. Because ultimately, Parliament can't function if parliamentarians' questions asked in good faith aren't answered properly. So look, I've concluded that whilst I'm honoured to be in Parliament, I mean, like everybody, I had great faith in our parliamentary system, in our constitution, in our police, in our judiciary. I'm beginning to question whether or not it's everything that we're told it is and that it's cracked up to be. So I've concluded that it's a powerful platform, which I've now got. And I was faced, after the political assassination by my colleagues in Reform, which again, it came out of the sun like a Spitfire, that one. I wasn't expecting it. I was genuinely doing my best to drive for change, which I think we need. And I think I was driving Reform's support. I was clearly saying things that Nigel Farage didn't like about the Pakistani rape gangs, about mass deportations of illegal migrants, and mass deportations of criminals in our prisons, this sort of thing. Obviously, clearly he didn't like that. And suddenly they found a pretext to politically assassinate me. And I'm now, as I say, an independent. So I'm faced with, do I sit there in this chamber with 650 other MPs where I'm quite impotent, even though I sort of quietly made quite a lot of noise. And I think people can see that I've genuinely tried to agitate and lobby for better government. So I with my team, and I've got a great team, Peter, I can't stress, we're a tiny team because we are literally, I've funded most of it so far myself. I funded my campaign in Great Yarmouth. I funded my campaign in Kingswood. I basically, this has cost me money. The lawfare, which I've been involved in, has cost me money with reform, which I'm happy to invest to try and change the way we're governed. So we sat down and we thought, new party? No, there are too many parties already. They're just run by the wrong people. So we thought, how do we make a difference? Not just in 29, we've got to win by 29, but how do we start to make a difference now? And we concluded that the right structure was a movement, and a movement which basically encouraged the entire country, those people, the bedrock of people who share our views that Britain was a great place to live, still is a great place to live. But I think we all know that if we don't do something, it's quietly slipping through our fingers. And, we're seeing more and more legal and illegal immigration, more and more births from people who aren't technically British. They were British, but they're now of foreign origin. Many of them from Pakistan, from Iraq. Iraq's just made it into the sort of parental issues, and they're all from cultures that are different to ours. So, I by the way, have nothing against immigration. I targeted immigration, which contributes to our well-being and our economy, is good, but not the immigration we've had. And I think everybody can see it. We can feel our entire sort of identity slipping through our fingers. So we thought a movement, and we thought, let's get everybody to support the movement, because the bigger the movement becomes, the more powerful it becomes in terms of influencing this current deficient sort of parliamentary structure we've got with the two-party system, which has failed us. And hopefully, as we grow, it'll do it today. As we probably saw, we've got 100,000 people signed up to the Lucy Connolly, so there'll be a debate in Westminster Hall on that now. I think we've made a huge difference with our rape gang inquiry. And my favourite expression is watch what the hands are doing, not what the mouth is saying. And I think we've all got sick and tired of listening to some academic spouting a load of rubbish, and our lives basically disappearing, down the loo. So what I'm saying to people is, if you agree that we need radical change and we need better policies and better government and more honest, more accountable government, which is what we should have, then for £20 you can join the movement. I call that 2 pints in the wrong pub, which is what it is. You can spend a tenner on a pint in London now. And what that does is that gives us a war chest to be able to fund what we need to do collectively. And then, as a movement, we've got, and the bigger we get, the more powerful we become. We can actually then start to make a difference today, before we see, if you like, the sand further slipping through the glass, and our liberty and the country we love slipping through our fingers. And we've got to collectively then win by 2029.
Okay. So
That's the philosophy. So it's a movement to unify. We don't want further division in the country. What we want is the sensible people, the silent majority, who very often don't say anything, don't do anything. And what I'm saying to you now is, it's your country, it's your responsibility, and we're going to act as a lightning rod to help you, if you agree with us, to help you get your country back. But to do nothing is unforgivable now. I think we all know that things aren't right. I don't want to do the country down because I think we've got this history, this wonderful history of freedom, of habeas corpus, of respect for the individual. Our Constitution is fantastic. As we know, the American Constitution is founded on our Constitution, basically. Theirs is written, ours is unwritten. So I want to, if people agree with me that things aren't right, I don't want to be too negative. I want to give people hope that if we take action now, we can actually affect change immediately, but then make radical change when we achieve government in 2029. Now, I've got friends of mine who have moved overseas, and we are getting some people joining from overseas, which is great. Many of them are British people who legged it to save themselves being overtaxed to fund this ridiculous welfare that we saw basically continuing last night. We don't want a welfare culture. We want an enterprise culture. And we want to reward people who contribute and people who take risk and people who do things, not people who sit at home on their backsides playing on Xbox or some other nonsense. But what we want is a positive structure. And I don't want to emphasize the negatives too much, although they're there. We all know that. We've got to try and also emphasize the positives of Britain, which we've got to fight for now. I think that, in essence, and people find it very difficult to understand the difference between a party and a movement. And I've had one journalist who we all know very well who keeps ringing me up and saying, does that mean you are sitting in Parliament as a Restore Britain MP? And I go, no, because we're a movement, we're not a party. I'm an independent MP representing my constituents in Great Yarmouth. We are a movement. Now, that doesn't mean to say the movement won't turn into a party. It might take over another party if it gets big enough. It might support another party with whom we agree if they get the right leadership. So it effectively means that also we can affect change now by, if we disagree with something, we can get our 100,000 petition very quickly. We can collectively operate together. So what we're trying to do is unify those people who care about their country and want it back. And I think there are millions of them. I may be wrong. If I'm wrong, it'll just fizzle out.
Well,
Nothing will happen.
You're not wrong. You're certainly not wrong in that Reform have swept and picked up a lot of popularity. The polls explain that people are upset. And for a new party to come out and get that much of the vote implies that people are fed up with the current two parties. I'm trying to understand the difference, the gulf in difference between what the people and the public are thinking and how Westminster operates. I've been watching every Dominic Cummings interview with interest. I'm just reading a book at the moment called How Westminster Works and Why It Doesn't. I don't know if you've read the book.
No.
It's a fascinating insight into why it does. Essentially, it doesn't work because of the whip. The whip itself forces people with career ambitions to fall into line. And so there's so many things that are dysfunctionally wrong. And there's a position now at the moment which you're going to recognise that there are a lot of people out there who are both Reform voters and very interested in what Restore is doing, and probably members of both.
We're cross-party. Anyone can join us.
Of course, but there is an...
As you see, Susan Hall has joined our...
But it's an unnatural alignment now. It's a weird, unnatural alignment where people are conflicted because there's the conflict between you and Nigel and the party, but similarities in what people want as the outcome.
The humble bee, a keystone species crucial to the survival of Earth's inhabitants. Here's how things would look if bees vanished. And here's how they'd look if humans vanished. But imagine if instead we became a keystone species by doing things the right way, by taking responsibility for our actions and becoming the solution. Iron mines the world's most responsible currency the right way. Because the future depends on it.
I don't think there's conflict. I think you can, if you want to remain as a Reform supporter but join Restore Britain, what you're saying is, yeah, we want change. Currently, we support reform. But again, how deep is reform support? You know, I played a part in driving some of reform support. I don't want to blow my own trumpet because we've never done that. But at the end of the day, I played my part. I was one of a small number of people who not only fought elections. You know, I've done this pretty much consistently since, as we've said before, you know, the Maastricht Treaty I fought, the referendum party I stood for. Then I did a lot for Business for Sterling. Then I did a lot for Vote Leave. Then I stood for the Brexit Party and I was elected to the European Parliament. And then because we didn't get our sovereignty back, I continued. And so here I am today. So I don't see any problem with Conservatives joining up. I encourage people who share our vision. We're a movement. We're not a party. Labour, we've got some Labour people who've joined. Now, you know, we're not going to get too many of them, although I think if Labour go on making a complete mess of it like they are at the moment, and with a sizable majority singularly failing to govern the country effectively, then maybe some of them will join us from the red wall seats. Because again, this is not a party. This is a movement. This is for people who share our vision that we want what is the best country in the world when it's functioning properly. We want it back. And we know things are wrong. So things are badly wrong. We all know that. We see it in our everyday lives. Everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So we've got to reverse that.
So what does win in 29 mean?
We need to win, and that's why I voted against proportional representation. My colleagues in Reform, the other four, voted for it. I think I voted against. I want first past the post. We need first past the post because what we need is an overall majority to be able to affect the change that Boris should have affected when he had an 80-seat majority in 2019, which we helped gift him. But what did Boris do? What did Boris do with that 80-seat majority?
Nothing.
I'll tell you what he did. Diddly squat.
Yeah, nothing.
Less than diddly squat, because he presided over mass legal immigration and brought in a whole load of people who are ultimately, over the next 10 years, going to cost the British taxpayer an absolute fortune.
I still don't know what win means in 29, though.
Win means we need an overall majority in the House of Commons somehow.
And you're flexible as to what that means.
At the moment, what the movement needs to do, if the British people agree, they need to sign up, show they agree, and then we get, because most of these people respond, as you know, to polls. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think this development, it all started with Tony Blair, as you know, and his band of what I would describe as not merry men, but sort of devious men. It started with them. That was government by poll. You know, Maggie was really our last proper government who ran the country, I believe, in the interests of the British electorate and the taxpayer. She respected hard work. She respected the taxpayers. She respected contributing. Doesn't mean to say we don't protect and look after those who genuinely need looking after. But what we don't want to do is be supporting a bunch of liggers who don't actually care about the country or indeed care about making a contribution. So she was the last. Then we get. I mean, John Major was just a farce, as I've said before. I mean, he should never have won that 92 election, but he did. And then we ended up with, we would have had Neil Kinnock, as I've said before, and probably never had another socialist government again in the country. But then we ended up with Blair, and he undermined our constitution. He basically governed by poll. He wasn't interested in principle. And I think in a way, what we've got to get away from is this business of governing by poll, because people will always vote for free handouts if you offer it to them, and we're increasingly seeing the effects of that now. What we need is some principle and some action and some decision-making from people who want to do something that's going to benefit us in the long term, not benefit the idle in the short term. So Tony Blair started it. David Cameron continued it. I think he had a sort of secret admiration for Tony Blair. I'm sure his ambitions were honourable, but I mean, the net outcome from the Blairite and Cameronite years is effectively almost like sort of woodworm working away at a piece of wood. Gradually, it's hollowed it out, and what we've got to do is pour whatever it is you need, pour on it. Cuprinol is it you pour on to get rid of the woodworm, whatever it is. We need to quickly administer that. So we don't want to be governed by poll. What we want to be governed by is sensible policies that reward those people who make a contribution. And I think historically that's what's always happened. And in my view, that involves releasing the individual, reversing statism, and changing the way in which the entire sort of organs of government are currently not operating, because they don't. And I've seen it. I don't like the European Parliament, Peter, but I tell you, as a parliament, it functions better than Westminster.
So I think if somebody is looking ahead to 29, they think their influence is a vote. I vote for a party. I vote for either Conservatives because I believe there's something stilling them, or I vote for Reform because I want change. When they join the movement, it's a little bit opaque about how that's going to enforce change in Parliament. And is that by design? Is it because you have to see what the movement
We're
covers?
putting out our sort of draft policies at the moment. We put one out this morning. Our, Englishman's home is his castle, which is always one of my philosophies. I mean, I think if people break into your house, it's a nonsense for people to be arrested for defending their own property when miscreants break in, threaten their family, threaten their entire safety, and then end up being hurt. The answer is don't break into people's houses because you risk basically with the consequences of that. That to me, that's quite straightforward, and I think most people agree with that. So that's out this morning. We agreed the wording.
Can I get a gun?
We agreed the wording at about 6 o'clock this morning. Well, I haven't gotten it at the moment. They've been taken away.
Yeah.
So look, we're gonna put out what we think are sensible policies, and we're going to continue to do that. But eventually, we found this app which allows people to feed in to our policies, and this is why we mentioned private prosecutions. So where the state's going wrong, if we've got 2, 3, 4, 500,000 people who subscribe more, maybe. I mean, there's no reason. There's a lot more people in the country than that. So hopefully there are plenty of people who care about changing the way we're governed. But if we can get this huge movement, we can actually affect change now. And I think that is the essence, in a way, of a truly functioning democracy.
So I'm
not making any promises about how, because it's going to evolve a bit like this has evolved. The idea is evolving. So I'm not making a statement, but what our intention is and what we're going to do is we will eventually find a way of allowing people to express their views. So, for instance, if something's wrong, we can ask our supporters, would you like us to pursue either a private prosecution or a judicial review or some other course of action to correct this? Would you like us to, let's collectively get a Westminster Hall debate straight away? We won't have to wait. We won't have to do a petition. We will be able to do it immediately. So we will be able to make some immediate change because in the end, as you probably know, most parliamentarians are tarts. They respond to public opinion. Mm-hmm. And as I say, they have been ruled by polling. And if this movement is supported by more and more people, they will have to respect the view of those people. And we're going to try and make that, give people input. So input through this app we found, which we're going to develop over time. I'm not going to commit myself to how that's going to happen because I don't know. As I said, I don't know all the answers, but my instinct is we want to reflect the majority view. And I think in a way, modern Britain doesn't reflect the majority view. It's come to reflect the malign minority view. And I argue, and I hope, there are so many decent people in Britain who historically have never, not like the French who sort of, take to arms very quickly. We tend to be quite benign, quite decent, quite long-headed. But as you say, now you can see this shift in voting going to reform. Reform's support, I think, is skin deep. So if we can find something better than a sort of Nigel Farage show, which reflects the majority rather than just what Nigel thinks. And, I've worked with Nigel. He's not surrounded, in my view, by great people. It is the Nigel show. It is a bit of a cult. I liken him to a beech tree. Nothing, as you probably know, as a farmer, grows under a beech tree because when the leaves fall, they're poisonous. So I think that is not the solution to, in my opinion, to what we now need. What we need is something which is transparent, which is open, which allows people to have a say without being able to overturn what the majority want. It needs to be carefully managed, which is why I'm not going to go into the detail now because I don't know the detail.
See it evolve.
it's going to evolve. It's evolving. The whole thing's evolving. I mean, people say to me, why a movement? I go, because a movement's better than a party, which is just going to create more division. And to give you an example, I'm talking to, just because what I call the Reds and the Blues have gone wrong, and they ultimately are the people who've been governing the country, doesn't mean there aren't some good people within both the Reds and the Blues. Not sure there are that many in the Reds, but there may be one or two decent people. But I think in the Blues, there are some very good young Tory MPs who I'm getting on with.
Katie Lamb,
great lady. I mean, we've got Jack Rankin. I'm not going to go into too many names, but there's lots of them. Peter Bedford. I mean, there's lots of people who I talk to there, and lots of people who I think share concern about the way in which Britain is going. But the history of the party means that they've got this overhang. And again, many of the people who I call the overhang are decent people. I don't want to denigrate them, because I think most of them have a sort of an altruistic view. But what happens in Westminster is you get sucked into this vortex of sort of pettiness, and you become absorbed by what's happening in Westminster, what's happening in your party. You're governed by the whips. This is a great thing about being an independent MP. I
hate the whip.
I can get up in the morning and I can do exactly what I want, and I haven't got somebody telling me I've got to be doing this, doing that, or doing the other. So we've been able to make a change, and I think there are young Tories. Lib Dems, are there many of them? There are a few. I can think of a couple. Greens, can't think of any Greens at the moment. Have a pop at the Greens every now and again.
They're all communists.
They're quite questionable, a whole lot of them. I'm not sure we want too much greenery in our government. But I if people share my view, and if they don't, I respect that. If I'm wrong and people don't want what I think we need, then don't join Restore. But if you do, join up, because the more of you who join up, as I say, my country, my responsibility.
Well, I think I get it. I think the idea being is that there is this dysfunction in government. There's dysfunction how Westminster operates, and then there's public opinion, which is very obvious at the moment. If you're right, you will see a huge membership, and that membership can and somehow form around some political idea and then become the change we want to see. That's
the plan. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the plan. That's why it had to be a movement initially. But as I say, it can become a party. I don't. As a moment, all options are open, and that's where we want to be. But we want to be the lightning rod that does reflect truly what that silent majority think. And if they want change, they need to now sign up, because if they don't, I think we can all feel what we know and love slipping away.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm very interested. One of the things I'm really interested in is this private prosecutions against corrupt officials. As someone well, we've got an interview coming out today with Raja Mir discussing the grooming gangs.
Well, he's helping us. He's helping with our inquiry. He's a top man.
Which is great, because
he gets bad press, but I don't know why. He's extremely lucid and clear.
Because he's a threat to the establishment.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that you're having your own inquiry alongside the national inquiry, because what will be interesting is the people who refuse to talk to you.
Peter, we've never tried to blow our own trumpet, but at the end of the day, we've played our part without doubt in having our privately crowdfunded rape gang inquiry, which, by the way, has got a tiny amount of money relative to the J report, which I think cost £186 million. I mean, we've got £600,000. But we're going to make every penny count.
But could you privately prosecute?
Emily Maitlis accused me of making money over it. I've actually given money to it. It's
that
extraordinary.
Interview was embarrassing. But could you privately prosecute an MP who has been involved in a cover-up?
Well, I do think that is stage 2. But we've now got the statutory inquiry, which the Labour Party was very reluctant to give us. And I would remind all of them they actually voted against the statutory inquiry very recently. Yes. They've now done a complete U-turn, another one.
Well, they had to following Casey review. And
credit to Esther McVeigh. She's, again, this is all part of the power of having a cross-party sort of a grouping, which doesn't end up with sort of partisan competition. I don't think we want that. We want right or wrong. And I think, she's helped us a lot. We've got a lot of people who've helped us a lot. I mean, Sammy Woodhouse is fantastic. We've got, she's assisted by a guy called Natalie, who's doing a great job as well. So we've got people who are really doing, we're making 5p do the job of £1 at the moment, and we hope to then have our hearing. We're not stopping. A lot of people have now said to me, "Oh, you should return the money and you should stop." No. Do you trust the state to mark its own homework?
No.
I don't. And you only have to look at the post office. You only have to look at the infected blood scandal. You only have to look at the Gulf War jabs. It goes on and on. Yes. Look at COVID. Look at that farce. That inquiry's cost millions. It's almost as if you know, it's a bit like Dominic Cummings saying that the current cabinet meetings, the minutes of the meeting are already sitting on the right hand of the Prime Minister ready to be signed. Well, that's not how government, in my view, should work. So, and I think that's the case with any inquiry. It takes too long. It costs the taxpayer a fortune. And ultimately, the objective is ball, long grass, kick. And that's always what happens. I mean, look at the Iraq war farce, the Chilcot inquiry. I mean, come on, we all know that was just an establishment cover-up.
Of course. I mean, of course. This is why I don't understand why Alistair Campbell has any legitimacy anywhere.
Well, I agree. He's in my view,
should be arrested by it.
Alistair Campbell and I have often nearly come to blows in the Burnley boardroom and in my own boardroom at Southampton. I mean, he is an extremely discourteous human being. As well as being extremely misguided.
Bit of a war criminal in my books. I think he should be in The Hague. I think the thing that's really interesting, once you start to understand the dysfunction of government and you start to understand the incentives at play, you realize why there's a lack of integrity with MPs. I think one of the reasons people like you is because you don't need the money. This isn't a career choice. And so your actions are very kind of Edmund Burke-like in that you are truly representing the people. What I want to know is how do we get more people like that? How do we get rid of the whip? How do we have a government where people can vote based on what they feel, not what they're being told, and actually have laws that actually benefit the public? Because at the moment, I feel very much like we have a minority government led by unions who want to destroy our country. That's how I feel.
Well, it's not just the unions. I mean, unions have got to understand that in order to employ lots of people, you've got to have a vibrant economy, and you've got to have people who actually take risk and contribute. As Abraham Lincoln, I think, said, you don't make the poor richer by making the rich poorer. And that ultimately is what they've got to get through their thick skulls, because, you know, if you want to go the same way as the communists, try it again. The formula doesn't work. It's been tried throughout history. And you do need individual enterprise, and you do need the right structures to protect private property and other things if you want to have a form of sort of what I call altruistic human existence. But I mean, look, how do we? It's a very difficult question that you've asked there, because you're right. But the lawyers are a big problem. Okay. I think the lawyers are a massive problem, and the entire parliamentary structure enriches lawyers. Who gets enriched by the COVID inquiry? Lawyers. Who gets enriched by human rights laws? Lawyers, not least Starmer, Hermer, and these other, what I call malign people who are now right at the heart of our government. They shouldn't be. I mean, they've made money out of human rights law, which, as you know, I would repeal immediately. Yeah. The Human Rights Act, which embeds within the ECHR, has to be repealed. But look, how do we do it? The only way I could see of doing it was the movement. And if the movement gets big enough, Peter, I think it can. It's the collective will can defeat this minority vested interest, which I think is doing us all so much harm now. And lawyers historically do get half a cut above themselves throughout history. And it's going to be very difficult to take them back down to size because, as you know, we've all been brought up to believe in the rule of law. Well, you can only believe in the rule of law when you have lawyers who function properly, a judiciary that functions properly. I mean, I no longer entirely trust our judiciary. I mean, I don't think the sort of belief we have in our judges, which probably was well-founded in the past, I don't think it is well-founded now.
Now so captured?
That all needs to be looked at. It's all been captured by this ridiculous DEI and all the other rubbish that's being peddled, which is effectively an excuse to oppress people. That's all it is. And we need people who are going to challenge that. And that's what the movement's about. If you don't believe in all this rubbish, and we get it every day in our lives, join up, and you will empower a majority of people to then exert its will on this out of control structure that we call our government.
It's very important that you don't lose this, okay? This is your inheritance through Bitcoin.
Let Bitcoin rip. Don't rip up your Bitcoin. Set up inheritance with Casa.
How do you communicate and educate people on this as well? Because this conversation me and Connor had on the way down, I'm reading about 5 books at the same time at the moment. I'm reading Hayek's Fatal Conceit, Jane Jacobs' The Death and Life of Great American Cities, just trying to understand my own town. I'm reading Ray Dalio's Why Countries Go Bust. I'm reading The Populist Delusion, I can't remember his name, and then The New Localism.
Well, that's Mackay, I think, isn't it? Popular Delusions?
No,
The Man
no,
of
The Populist Delusion, that's a different book. The Populist Delusion, it's like Namir Panar. Oh, Connor will find out.
To be truthful, I'm reading one at the moment about the Weimar Republic and it's the Ferguson book.
When Money Dies.
When Money Dies.
Yeah.
But I find I just so busy. I like to read, but I just don't have the time to do the reading I'd like to do.
Well, I skip between
Nima
Parvini. I skip between books based on the interviews. So, when I was interviewing you today, I went back to the why, how Westminster works and why it doesn't. But I'm reading all these books. And I'm getting really deep into the knowledge of history and how constitutions were established and what is the role of politicians and why it works and when it doesn't work. But I don't think a lot of people are doing that. And I think a lot of people just vote based on what they see on Twitter, what they see on Facebook, some basic lines that they see. I don't think people... there's a sense that government isn't working, but there's not a realization, like a deep realization. How do we get to the point where people truly realize? Because I feel like I feel like we're at the point, this might sound a little bit crazy, that we're actually at the point where we need a revolution. I don't mean a bloody revolution. I don't mean we need to get our muskets out, but I do feel like we need to rethink the entire structure of our government and democracy, because to me, it's completely failed. It's failed economically and it's failed socially. I mean, I don't even think people have heard of Hayek. I don't think people really understand the basics and theory behind Austrian economics. I don't think it's not even mainstream. Yet to me, it's common sense.
Well, the Austrian school, I've read the Road to Slavery and things like that. I mean, it's a great book. I mean, that was all part of my sort of economic reading in days past, and I'm very much in the Austrian school. There was a great economist at Dresdner Bank. He was called Kurt Rickerbacker, and he used to write every week. He was brilliant, Austrian school economist, but he's been wrong because, ultimately where we're living a lie. This is why I had my 10-minute rule bill about quantitative easing, which is still alive, Peter. That's still going. Christopher Chope keeps that alive. We've sort of managed to keep it alive, but I think it's going to die just before the recess, because all of his 10-minute rule bills they have to die before the recess, so the government will probably kill them off. Why? I don't know, because QE is the root cause of most of our problems.
Yes.
And I think, we're living on our reputation. We have to accept that. We are, in my view, getting high on our own supply, I think is the right expression. And that's been allowed to happen because every time we fail, somebody prints a load more money and covers up the problems, which is not the essence of capitalism. So we no longer live in a capitalist society. In capitalism, you have to fail. And from failure, you learn.
Yep.
And we've almost become this protected species, which is going to die out if we're not careful.
Yes.
So in answer to your question on the rest of it, you can't expect everybody to be highly educated. And very often the most educated people they're keen to win the argument, as you say, by debate. I'm not sure we can win it by debate. I think we've got to now win it by action, which is why I think people need to sign up to the movement. I think we've got to be active. We've got to take action. We've got to do things. But to those people who don't read and who don't have an interest, I think just look at our history. Look at the wisdom of people who've gone before us. They've never lived like we're trying to live now. The collective wisdom that is encapsulated into the Bible and into, the way in which the Christian ethic works, that must be better than a sort of short-term, self-serving culture which rewards indolence and doesn't reward enterprise. So I think people can see it.
So Connor's brought up the policy proposals. You've gone with some pretty headline proposals to begin with. Net negative migration. I think.
But by the way, Peter, I don't think we're saying anything here that I haven't already said.
I agree.
On X.
I think net negative immigration. I think most people understand that now. Even Labour voters understand that, and everyone's keen on that because they've understood where we are now. I even think of deporting all illegal migrants. People now understand that. Restoring the death penalties is pretty bold. I think
we say in exceptional circumstances.
Yes, I certainly find it hard to argue, say with the Southport murder. I can't ever pronounce his surname.
Well, we've actually used that as an example. So
yeah.
So I think there are cases which are so vile that the death penalty in the end is a huge disincentive for people, and it's there if somebody does do something heinous.
Is it really a disincentive? Is it proved to be a disincentive in America? I'm not sure.
Well, again, people in our culture who basically blame everything on mental health problems. I mean, that's out of control, that view now. And oh dear, he's done something wrong, or he or she's got mental health problems. Well, no, they've done something wrong. And at the end of the day, most people know the difference between right and wrong.
Oh yeah.
And so I personally think there has to be that backstop. That's my opinion. But again, if we get our movement going and we open that up, we can find out what the majority of people think. And there will be people. We've had a couple of people who said, "Well, I'm not going to continue to support you because that's what you're suggesting." And that's not the purpose of this. You're not going to agree with every policy that we put forward. But the key question is, do you believe and agree with most of them? And you'll have your chance then as part of the movement to make a comment on this. So I don't think everybody's going to agree with everything.
No, they won't. So the ban the Burqa one. So I obviously this has become a debated topic recently because it came up in Parliament and Keir Starmer avoided it. But I'm always interested on the ban the Burqa. What is the philosophical underpinning that someone has for that? Is it safety? Is it oppression? Because as a libertarian, I also support free expression.
Well, yes, but I think to hide your face is not part of our culture, and in many there are some Muslim countries where the burqa is banned, as you know. So I personally think it's not part of our culture. If you want to wear a burqa, don't come and live here. Quite simple. Go and wear a burqa where it's culturally the norm, and it's not culturally the norm for us to be wearing burqas. So,
but there may be other religious symbols that do that.
We did think about putting the niqab in there, but I think the principle is, if you're going to live in an open society, don't cover your face up. That's not part of our Christian culture.
So it would be, and so it's the covering of the face.
I think it's the covering of the face. I mean, I think I'm right in saying they've banned it in France now.
So I think it's France, Denmark.
There's a number of European, but also some Muslim countries.
But some have banned it. What they've banned is face coverings rather than banning the burqa outright.
Well, yeah, but the burqa is a complete face covering.
No, but also they've done it on a safety issue.
Yeah.
So, for example, when I don't want somebody coming into my coffee shop wearing a motorcycle helmet because it'll intimidate my staff.
Well, how do you legislate between the difference between a burqa and a motorcycle helmet? You shouldn't need to cover your face up. Why are you unhappy to show us who you are?
Yeah. I only struggle with it, like I say,
quite apart from the fact that in our culture, I think, this is the bizarre thing. Women, women shouldn't have to cover up their faces. And culturally, Islam has a very different opinion to women. I always find this a fascinating debate. How did the Me Too movement square the circle with the way in which Islam prescribes that the role of the woman?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is bizarre. And it's almost, again, as if there's a sort of two-tier opinion on that. It's a bit like, we were talking about the Greens just now. We've been having a go at this chap, Dickinson. I think he's called Dickinson, who's the MP. Is he the leader of the Greens? I think we've been having a go at him. He's a Norfolk MP with me. And, he's been having a go at trophy hunters. So we go back and say, well, do you agree with this? Halal slaughter should be banned on that basis. I think we've been back to him 6 times and we haven't been able to get an answer out of him.
Ideologically trapped. I
think it's what's called duplicitous hypocrisy.
Well, I found that with this debate around free speech as well. I'm fast becoming a free speech absolutist because I'm fed up of seeing discussions and debates about, where's the red line? Well, we can imprison Lucy Connolly, but we can't imprison Kneecap, or we can't imprison
Bobby Vilan, or whatever he's called.
Bob Villain.
Bob Villain.
But
well, we did a big post about that. In fact, I think people quite like that. That was a. And again, I am a free speech proponent, but you can't have a system which locks up Lucy Connolly. And I legally, I've read what she put up, and we've done the petition. We're going to have the debate, hopefully. And I've spoken to Ray Connolly, and I feel extremely. I feel for her family and what's happened to her, because she actually put out a tweet in response to the Southport killings, which basically said,
in my opinion,
she was not advocating that people go out and do something. She was actually just saying, I think she said, I don't care if, or in my opinion, whatever. I think there was and again, she was persuaded, whether it was by legal aid or not. I think it probably was legal aid. And again, this is where you come back to being careful of the legal system. She pleaded guilty, which she should never have done. And I think she pleaded guilty to a category of offence which doesn't reflect what she said in a social media post that was deleted 4 hours later. You then get this character, Bob Vilan, about whom we posted, basically chanting death, death to the IDF. I mean, in front of a crowd of as we said, of £8 a mug, ice coffee drinking, iPhone wielding sort of faux liberals who sort of joined in. I mean, the whole thing is just, you couldn't make it up.
Well, they would probably join in with anything in that kind of crowd.
And then Kneecap, as for Kneecap, I mean, to be talking about the tactics employed by the IRA, wearing, a face covering, and then talking about boycotting the legal case against one of the band members whose name I've forgotten. I can't even pronounce his name. I think he's got some Irish name, hasn't he? It's just. I mean, how can you have this 2-tier system, which to me doesn't sit easily? So that's got to be sorted out.
Well, I that's why I kind of find it easier just to become. I'm very close to free speech absolutist. I'll defend Kneecap as artists and being creative and thinking of their background. I don't defend telling them to kill MPs. I think they've apologised.
Well,
for that.
They did was suggesting killing Conservative MPs.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that in the slightest. But I'm half Irish and Republican side. Like, my family's from the Republic. But they're also artists. They're playing characters. It is an artistic freedom. I just find. I just think we need a very high bar.
But then you can't lock Lucy Connolly
I agree with
for
that.
A social media post.
No, she should be out. She should be out. It's ridiculous.
Most of the British public would agree with that.
Yeah, I just think...
Again, a big movement would have a huge impact on that.
I think if we had a referendum on Lucy Connolly being released, she would be released.
Exactly.
But this is why I think we just have to have a very high bar, like they do in the US, for what is actually real incitement to violence, like genuine incitement to violence. And even with some of that, I still feel like, well, if you read a tweet or hear a message and go and actually kill somebody, it's still on you. It's still on you as the individual. And I feel like to escape this ideological trap, if we just lived in a free society, we have free markets and free speech, if we had a lot more freedom, a lot of these issues would dissipate.
But then we're welcoming a culture that puts a fatwa on people.
Oh.
I mean, that is again a contradiction in terms. And look at what happened to Salman Rushdie, who's one of our leading intellects. And you were talking about
they attacked him.
You were talking about people who make a contribution intellectually and who write books which people can read and learn from. Well, he's done that. I mean, he's brilliant. And at the end of the day, you shouldn't have a society where you can put a fatwa on somebody. I read yesterday, I think even Donald Trump, they're threatening to put a fatwa on Donald Trump. I mean, what culture puts a fatwa to go and kill somebody? I mean, that's just a load of nonsense, isn't it?
But you say that, but isn't there a similarity between that and executing nuclear scientists?
Well, I don't think our culture, you go and put a fatwa on people.
It's not a fatwa, but we still assassinate people in other countries. Or and I say we, maybe I mean the West. We have assassinated people.
Well, to be honest, Peter, I've not been part of that. I've not been in a position where I've had to sit in a bunker with Obama and
make those decisions.
And make those decisions. Yeah.
Longer term, post 29, just say there isn't a new party. Is your intention to stay independent? Do you want to stay an MP still? So on this podcast, you are definitely hearing me talk about Bitcoin a lot. Well, why? We live in a really strange time with governments driving inflation with their reckless spending and endless money printing. There is a way out of this. There is a way to protect your money, and that is by stacking Bitcoin. I've made loads of shows about Bitcoin. You can go and research this, you can go and read the books, but the truth is it is the hardest money ever created. If you are interested in protecting your financial future, it's time for you to get on the Bitcoin train. I've been stacking Bitcoin personally and through my businesses since 2017. It's protected me, it's secured my family's future, and it also strengthens all of my businesses. So if you want to start stacking Bitcoin, where do you do it? Well, for me, it's with Gemini. They're a fully licensed, full reserve exchange and custodian, so they give you a secure way for you to buy and own your Bitcoin. There's no risks and no funny business. So if you're serious about stacking Bitcoin the right way, head over to Gemini.com, which is GEMINI.com.
Well, I want to affect change.
Yeah.
I didn't come into this to be. I'm 67. I've got my own. I've had my own career in a way.
Yeah.
I've done lots of things, unlike many of my colleagues in Parliament. You know, I've been busy in lots of different sectors, and I've got interests in lots of different businesses. And what I enjoy now is helping able young people to build their businesses, which I've done on many occasions. It's not easy for them to find people they can trust who are going to effectively help them, i.e. what the stock exchange should be doing, which is matching people with the ideas with people with the money. And what it's become is a sort of a risk-averse centre which is dying, trying to protect the savings of the baby boomers who've got all the wealth locked up, and it's not flowing over into the young people. So we've got to find a solution to that too. But to answer your question, did I come into this to lead? No, I mean, I would have willingly supported Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister, but I now don't think he's fit to be Prime Minister. That's my opinion, having worked with him and seen what he's done and the people who surround him. And, you know, I thought he shared my vision. I think he doesn't share my vision entirely. And my vision, I'm here to change the way in which we're governed for the better. Now, if you know, I'm how much longer have I got in terms of, you know, Reform said I had early onset dementia. I don't think I have.
You seem to be doing okay.
I seem to have an ability to be able to talk relatively lucidly, but that was all part of, I think, the sort of the standard hit job, you know. But so I think if the movement is successful, I hope it will be the agent for change. Now, if I'm called on to lead that in the short term, I will now do that. I mean, what happened to me in Reform irritated me. I thought it was morally wrong what they did. I thought the way in which they did it was wrong, and it's got me angry in a way. So what I want to see is, I want to see a structure where we get sensible people behaving properly and actually governing and understanding that they are the servants of the people, not the masters of the people. And in a functioning democracy, that's how it should work. And that doesn't just go for Westminster, that goes for local government as well, because local government is wrong. All the blobbish quangos are wrong. That's unaccountable power, which basically serves itself, not the people. And the people have got to get this through their head. This is very difficult to unwind this. So the only way I can see that we're going to do it is this mass movement which shows that people agree that things are wrong and they need to change. And that's the only way. I mean, one man, one woman, a lone voice, crowded out by, and you watch in the European Parliament. And again, at Southampton Football Club, I probably made a mistake. I never spent a penny on PR. I always thought, I could write better press releases than the people who were using some sort of blokish English, which I've been taught to write proper English. So I never used to use them. But I actually now realize, probably naively, that they can make people believe things that aren't true. And they do make people believe things that aren't true. Mm-hmm. And that's how this malign state manages to protect itself. And the European Union spends more money on PR than almost any other organ in the world. And it was instructive that in 2016, most of the PR people I knew were almost in mourning when the British people voted to leave the EU. In a relatively straightforward question, and they gave a very straightforward answer, even though the government recommended they vote to remain. So, I mean, PR is powerful, and I think this movement can effectively reverse all that, and that's what we've got to try and do. As I said in our statement, I don't have all the answers, but if we collectively feel our way, I'm pretty sure we can get to the right answer.
Yeah,
and maybe we make some decisions. It's a bit like, the most successful economists, fighting wars. You lose the odd battle, but in the end you got to win the war. And I think that's where we are now. And anyone who tells you, I know this answer or I know that answer and this is the way we're going to do it, they're not informing you correctly, because nobody has all the answers.
I'm particularly worried locally where I live in Bedford. A range of issues. I think I discussed this with you before, but I mean, even yesterday, Paul Connor there's an area where all the local drunks sit, and there was somebody there with a buggy and a kid?
Buggy and a child. She had a bottle of alcohol in her hand. And
the husband was gone, just gone. One guy laying on the floor in a coma, like in his regularly seeing ambulances there. This is the top of our high street. There's crack being smoked one street from our high street. But everybody I know who runs a company or a business in the town centre, cafes, bars. I mean, my bar is down, it's halved its turnover in 2 years. And everybody I know who runs a company locally is petrified of what's happening, because there's less people coming in, and the ones that are coming in spending less, has got less money. We've seen 270,000 jobs go since Rachel Reeves' disastrous budget. But I don't even think we felt the full pain of their economic position yet.
Peter, I'm telling you, the economy is about to implode.
Yes, I feel it.
And what these idiots, and Rachel Reeves is an idiot. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've got no idea what they're doing. And when she says, well, we're looking after the workers, we're not taxing the workers more.
That's a lie.
Well, of course it's a lie. Mm. The workers are a function of the employers. We're all in it together. And, I should have brought you a book on our family business. I don't know, did I give you one last time?
No, which is it?
I'll send you one. Mm. So Learn Oliver, our family business, has been going over 100 years. My father died in 22. We did a book to commemorate it. And, we've got people who've worked for us all our lives. That's the kind of unit we want, if you like, the backbone in Britain. People all get to know each other. You're accountable. It's not like these big public companies where, the people running them very often don't have a shareholding. They don't really understand the business. They can treat people badly without having any consequences on them themselves. They can take huge bonuses. If you've got a family business, our margins are so fine. I have a joke. We've hardly had a dividend out of Learn Oliver for 30 years. We pay all the staff. We actually, pay some bonuses. But, we've got this headwind of regulation, of tax collection, of, health and safety legislation, of just about every sort of licensing and law that's thrown at these companies. That's a headwind to creating wealth. And if Rachel Reeves thinks that, by raising taxes like she did, she's not going to, and Angela Rayner with her workers' rights nonsense. I mean, the balance is far too far in favor of the employee and against the employer now. And maybe in the past, the pendulum has been too far the other way, but it's all about a balance. And it's the same with the football club. It's a balance between the supporters and the board. You've got to get the right balance. We haven't got the right balance. So I think she's in for a rude shock. And the only problem is, in the end, she's going to run out of road to tax the private sector, because the private sector is collapsing as a percentage of our GDP. It should be, in my view, the public sector shouldn't be, it should be maximum 25%. And it's heading for 50%. It's 46, heading for 50. But that's direct, probably indirectly. And, you with government procurement, you get fraud. It's a bit like when you send money from northern Italy to southern Italy, because northern Italy is the richest part of Europe, the Po Valley. You get fraud. You get sticky fingers, like government procurement contracts. Why do you think they all love the HS2s? Lots of scope to make big money, lots of sticky fingers, lots of dishonesty. And I do think, we've got a society that's becoming progressively dishonest. And I always say the qualification for succeeding in communist Russia towards the end of communism is you had to be a very good liar. And I think by the end of the communist period, which collapsed, as you know, in 88, 97% of Russians probably didn't know the difference between the truth and a lie, because you didn't tell the state the truth. You learned to lie to survive, to lie about your abilities, to lie about your wealth, to lie about just about everything. Otherwise, Big Brother took it off you. I don't want to live in a country like that.
But it's becoming like that.
It is becoming like that. It is. You can see it. You can feel it happening. We can all feel it happening. And that's what the movement needs to reverse. This is our last chance to have any hope of reversing this.
There's a landlord I know of in Bedford now who no longer buys properties. He lets properties and then sublets them to the government, to the local council, because they pay so much to house for emergency housing.
It's not just that. Serco's going around my constituency, taking private landlords out of the market, paying them a fortune, giving them long-term contracts, and in order to house illegal migrants. I mean, the whole thing's a farce.
I think that's happening everywhere. Okay, listen.
And what the government's also doing, and we've learnt this from our questions, is you ask a question and they are outsourcing a lot of this stuff to people like Serco, people like Mears, and the questions they answer. So you have to learn how to ask the question, because they will put it down into a contract with them. And if you ask the question, no, we don't do that. But that's happening in the government's name through the contractors. It's a bit like public servants. They're able to lie about the number of public servants by taking people on short-term contracts, which don't count towards a public sector employer.
Is that someone for you? Have we hit our time limit? Conscious of time, I know you've got to get on. Final question. How do you think Southampton are going to do this year?
Well, we posted about it yesterday because they seem to be caught up in this ridiculous recruitment of which their academy, which I set up the academy. I had a spat with Hugh Jennings, who used to work with me at Fulham, and indeed one of my staff, Malcolm Elias, died the other day. He was a great guy. But again, this business of legislating against white people is just wrong. You can't have a society that denigrates racism and then supports reverse racism, which is the same. So I had a pop at Southampton yesterday over this recruitment ad they put out, as I've had a go at Fulham. I think I've had a go at, can't remember, Leicester, was it? One of the other clubs, I think it was Leicester. And we'll go on doing it because we're uncovering this everywhere, and it's just wrong. And this is the sort of thing I think everybody agrees with me, but yet, the organs of the state continue to do it. It's bizarre. Anyway, so Southampton, what do they need to do? Well, they were even chanting my name positively the other day. I understand. I didn't hear it, but somebody told me they were chanting my name on the terraces. They used to chant "Swing low, swing Rupert Lowe from the Itchen Bridge" when I was there, but or Rupert Lowe's a wanker. But at the end of the day, I have an affection for the club. The stadium I built is still standing. I get accused of bankrupting them. I didn't. I left them in rude financial health, and I went back. The new board had a flyer at going up, bankrupted the club, and I went back to save it. In fact, we put the holding company into administration to save the football club. So I had no part in and again, people are so ignorant. They don't understand how to read a balance sheet. They don't understand And what they do is you just get caught up in all the nonsense. So I hope Southampton does well. I think they've got now the armoury to achieve that, which is the stadium. They've got the academy. They've got the structures there. But as always, Peter, without the people, you can have the best facilities in the world, but if you've got the wrong people leading the show, it goes over the edge.
Well, listen, look, good luck to Southampton. Good luck with Restore. I'm going to follow it with interest. I'm intrigued to see how it plays out.
It's going very well at the moment. We've got
100,000, is it?
We're heading for 100,000 Twitter followers, and we're hoping to get that today.
And
we launched it less than 48 hours ago.
Yeah. Well, good luck with it. I mean, I think Whitehall's broken. I think government's broken. I've lost all faith in it. And so I want to see somebody make a difference democratically, but I do want to see a difference. So look, good luck with it. And
we're going to have a go.
And I'm sure we'll.
And if people don't support me, I can go back and sip a mojito by my swimming pool.
Yeah. Do you ever think sometimes, why didn't I just do that?
That's a good question.
Yeah. All right. Look, good luck.
All right.
Speak to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you
Bye.
to everyone for listening. Bye.